Hello and welcome to another episode of the Best You interview series. It's Gary here again. Thank you very, very much for taking the time to tune in to this episode. And today I'm joined by coach and global credibility expert, TEDx speaker, author Mitchell Levy, who is here to discuss his work specifically in the credibility space with some other things thrown in there, I am sure. Mitchell is an international best-selling author of over 60 books, a certified stakeholder-centered coach, and an executive coach at Marshall Goldsmith's 100 Coaches, an organisation I'm very familiar with. I follow them online quite extensively. After interviewing 500 thought leaders on credibility, he published an international best-selling book, delivered a powerful TEDx talk on humanity, created courses, and created the Credibility Nation, which is also the name of his book covering the same topic. And that Credibility Nation is a membership community to help those live, learn, and surround themselves with others on the credibility journey. As an executive coach, Mitchell is a sounding board, a thinking partner, and someone who can hold the mirror to generate insights for personal change. Those just resonate with me so much. His professional experience includes spending 9 years on the board of a NASDAQ firm and starting 20 professional service companies in Silicon Valley, creating and running 4 executive business programs, incorporating 71 courses at Silicon Valley universities, and he co-founded and ran 4 CEO networking groups for a decade. One of Mitchell's superpowers is helping companies and individuals articulate where they are executing on their purpose in less than 10 words. And we're going to talk about that today too. One of the most relevant steps that one can take to bring out the best you, I love the linkage there with the podcast name, is to have clarity for themselves and share with those around them. So powerful. Through his extensive experience in credibility, Mitchell has developed a unique approach of helping organizations foster growth and transformation and create a culture of credibility. And if that's not all, Mitchell can also help you co-create, publish, and make you an Amazon best-selling author in 6 months. I don't know if I'm getting an inferiority complex after reading all that.
Oh, dude, no, man, you're reading the long version, and we all do a bunch of fun stuff, right?
I love it. But all that to say, Mitchell, thank you very, very much for joining me today.
Oh, my pleasure. It's great to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. So, very extensive journey that you've had thus far. Of course, specifically, what sparked your passion for helping people understand and navigate the topic and concept of credibility? How did that manifest itself?
In 1997 is when I left the last time I was working for corporate. I was working for Sun Microsystems. At the time, I was running the e-commerce component of Sun Supply Chain, which was $3.5 billion. Right. And did the entrepreneurial thing during the dot-com days. There's a lot of stuff we could bump into, but fast forwarding between 2005 and 2020, when COVID happened, one of the companies or set of companies I was running was book publishing companies. We had published 750 books. And what was fascinating about that is being able to see in the world that the world of book publishing is becoming more and more commoditized. It's becoming more and more democratized. And Gary, one of the problems when any industry or vertical becomes commoditized is a new business model enters the fray that's really hard to compete against.
Yeah.
Can I tell you what it is?
Yes, please.
It's stupid. It's all the quote unquote publishers who are publishing at a loss today because they'll make it up tomorrow in volume.
Yeah.
Okay. So as that was happening, I recognize I've recognized for a long time. But in 2019, I kind of woke up one day and said, listen, I've got to focus on something different. I'm not sure what it is. And so the first question I asked myself is, of all the authors I published, what was that one thing they were looking for? It was credibility. Yeah. I then looked at the dictionary and said, what is the definition of credibility? And I go, yeah, that's not right. And then in the next morning, I woke up and I thought, Napoleon Hill interviewed 500 millionaires and came up with Think and Grow Rich. Mitchell Levy is going to interview 500 thought leaders on credibility and come up with a book. It's actually called Credibility Nation. But that's actually what got me to where I am today. Is I didn't realize it would be a path that would completely change how I operate and who I am.
Yeah, so fascinating. Do you recall the epiphany moment where you kind of said, wait a second, wait, I know you explained it very briefly there in terms of what were each of the, the authors looking for, which was credibility and such. Was there that moment where there was a level of frustration, of want, of need, of angst, or something that got you to that spot where you said, wait, this is something new, this is something different, this is something that I need to pursue?
Oh, it's a good, it might have been when I realized what the authors were looking for, credibility.
Yeah.
And then when I looked at the definition in the dictionary, and the definition said the quality in which one is trusted. And it was somewhere around there that I said, I can expand that.
Yeah.
Maybe that was a true in the wild, wild west. You pull into town, you're riding a horse, the shoe on one of your, the horse's shoe come off, and you go into the local pub and you go, hey, I think there's two blacksmiths in town. Who do you trust?
Yeah.
Right. That's when the word credibility made sense.
Yeah.
But in a world where you can reach out to anyone around the world, that knowledge is available almost ubiquitously, in terms of thought leadership, that anyone could do anything to anyone, anywhere. All of a sudden, it's a whole lot more than just trusting somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, there has to be that deeper level or deeper layer in there. And do you see that becoming a key differentiator, using the example earlier in terms of publishing and the book publishing process? Is the credibility factor a key differentiator, maybe not the only differentiator, between successful authors and publishing houses and non-successful?
Ooh, that's a really deep question. Tell me what success means to you.
Well, I guess it would really, for me, in terms of authoring or publishing, it would probably be a combination of professional recognition that the topic is worthy and it's a good read, it's a value add, it's actually helping people, and that would be commensurate with a certain volume of sales. I'm not a published author, so I'm just kind of making this up, of course, on the fly. But in terms of, I'm just looking to see where credibility fits into the overall success story.
So would you mind if I completely change the way you think about that?
I'm more than open to that.
Okay. Well, by the way, one of the 10 values of credibility that came out of the research is that you're coachable, right? And so if you're coachable, I'll share, and you don't have to change, but I'll share my thought process.
Yeah.
So first thing I want to say is I want to update the definition of thought leader. Right? We think of a thought leader as the thought leader. It's one person and they own this one space. And that title's sort of gone maybe to influencer. Right. But even there, being an influencer doesn't mean you're a good influencer. You could be a bad influencer.
Yes,
being a thought leader, let's redefine the definition to say thought leadership is having one or more people listen to your thoughts.
Right.
If you're a parent, for as long as your kids will listen to you, you're a thought leader.
Yeah.
Right. So what's interesting is the concept of a book. The book is still looked at this quintessential element that's powerful. Now, when you talk to people who have published books, you do occasionally have great books published by great publishing houses.
Yeah.
And they do really well. You also have quote unquote great books, well-written books published by great publishing houses or not great publishing houses that don't do well at all. Mm. has nothing to do with the credibility of the book. It has to do with luck in many cases, right? So what's interesting is if you think about being a thought leader, i.e. having a book, and by the way, you can go to ChatGPT or a number of services today and have the book written for you.
Yeah.
Right? Once again, may not be as credible as you need to be, but one of the things that was relatively easy for you to take 5 or 10 of your previous podcasts and you could turn that into a book.
Yeah.
And that's really easy to do.
Yeah.
So the actual physical creation of the book is good. The actual content of the book almost doesn't matter. I know this is really bad for a publisher to say. What happens to me is, success of a book. Now we're talking about professional service providers and their books.
Yeah.
Right? If you're a professional service provider, i.e. a coach,
yeah,
the success of your book is that you use your book to pick up more clients.
Yeah.
You use your book to pick up more referral partners. Now, a old thought, which is not a correct thought, is, oh my God, if my book is great, it's going to be carried on bookstores around the world and people are going to find it and want to hire me. Well, that's not really the way it works for a coach. Coaches get paid based on referrals.
Yeah.
And in that referral, if by the way, this is one of the mistakes many of us authors make. I've written 65 books, so I've made this mistake many times. Is I meet somebody, I give them a copy of my book. Well, that's actually potentially a mistake because I'm now giving them homework that if they want to get back to me, hey, read my book and then you can decide if I'm a good coach. Well, you got to, I'm telling you to spend time doing research before you decide.
Yeah.
So what I would do instead is I could say, hey, let me sign, if we're together, let me sign a copy of my book, but don't read it. Let me send you a 5-minute video that explains the whole thing. Or a 3-minute video. Yeah. Or let me send you my 10-point checklist. Something that can be consumed so quickly that once you do it, you're like, oh yeah, let's talk further.
Yeah.
Let me give you the real example of success with a book for a professional service provider. Okay. When the book is being written, now you want it to be good enough. But the thing is, you could pick up clients along the way. People who are prospects, people who are referral partners, you could say, hey, if you had a little bit of extra time, I'd love you to read a chapter and give me feed forward. Or if you have time to browse the whole book, I'd love some feedback and maybe we'll incorporate something of yours in there. Yeah. Well, as you're having a conversation and building the relationship, that's where you can pick up clients. But for those people, when the book is getting close to being done, to be able to then identify 100, 200, 300 referral partners and prospects, create FedEx or USPS envelopes, do a handwritten note, specifically, turn to for those who are just listening, turn to a page of a book, put in a little sticky and say, read this paragraph.
Yeah.
And then send it. Follow up with phone calls 1, 2, 3 weeks later. And now what you've done is you've opened the door with a credibility piece. But the piece is not that you're going to assume they're going to read the book.
Yeah.
The piece is that, oh, here's a published author. They want to talk to me about this. They made it easy for me to understand it. Let's have a conversation.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does. I love everything you're saying and being very deliberate about the process in and around the publishing of the book. I mean, you talked very slightly there about, the writing of the book and the creative process of getting feedback as you're writing or towards the end of the process in and of itself. But the actual envelope of what it is you're doing gives you that opportunity to sit down and say, it is about more clients, it is about more opportunity, it is about more exposure, it is about, the ability to be able to expand your reach, expand your network and expand your opportunities from there as well. And the way that you put it, Mitchell, was in a completely non-cynical way or a non-manipulative way. It's just, this is the business this is what we're doing. I'm not just going to throw it out there and then just stand and stare at a shelf and see if someone comes and happens to glance upon it and picks it up and walks away with it to the desk to pay for it as well. So yeah, I mean, I do love that. I have certainly have food for thought. I'm a potential budding author in waiting, so you never know. And just back to the thought leadership, I can't remember exactly where it was now, but my definition very similar to yours, to what you explained earlier, in terms of a thought leader helps other people think. So it's not saying you consume what I think and then think the exact same thing. I'm going to tell you some things that I think, and you're going to think about those things, and then both of us have in some way benefited from that as we've moved forward. So I do love the concept around that. So in terms of credibility, one question I had as I was thinking about in preparation for us chatting today, does credibility, what relationship, actually, I'm not even going to ask a leading question, what relationship does credibility and likability have in your experience through the research, through your coaching that you've done for decades, and all the work that you've accomplished thus far?
By the way, that is a leading question, because you know what the definition of, if you're not, I'll tell you, right? So what I realized in the research, that credibility is not just the quality in which one is trusted. There are two other elements that are part of it. Credibility is the quality in which you're trusted, known, and liked.
Right.
And underneath that are 10 values.
Right.
And so what's interesting is the question that you asked was, what's the relationship between credibility and likability? Well, likability is a component of credibility. Let's step back and ask a bigger question. If I'm going to hire somebody, the question is, are they credible? So let's say you have two people. One's really credible. As a matter of fact, maybe even more credible, more credentials, more, clients coached under wraps and identified, better results from some metric that may or may not make sense.
Yeah.
The other person is also qualified, looks really good, but it turns out that first person, super overqualified or really qualified, kind of a jerk, not very likable.
Yeah.
The other person, a likable person, right? Now, if you're just going by the books, you're going to hire, let's have the best person, but if they're not likable, they're going to create a cultural issue.
Yeah.
Either in whatever they do. So likability, which is really interesting, if I think about the trust, know, like, and by the way, I've changed we have an expression, everyone knows know, like, trust. I have to tell you, it doesn't work that way anymore.
Right.
When you meet somebody, like when you and I first interacted, before you actually realized who I was, you didn't know at all, so you didn't trust me. I had to do one response to you, and you go, oh, that's interesting. Let me look a little bit more. Then I realized you did some research on me.
Yeah.
And thank you, by the way. So, but the first thing is you had 5 or 10 seconds to decide if I was trustworthy.
Yeah.
Right? Once you decide, if I was a jerk and didn't respond in a good way, I don't want to interview this guy. And that would be perfectly fine, right? But as you got to know me, you also got to see whether or not you liked me.
Yeah.
Right. And so let me give you one thing to think about in each one of the elements. So under trust, we already mentioned it. Probably one of the most important things to think about is being coachable.
Yeah.
If you're not coachable, how could I trust you? I mean, there are other elements there as well, other values. Under being known, the thing that often stands out bigger than anything else is being a servant leader, being of service to others.
Yes.
And then the last piece, since there's only two, I'll share both. One is respect. And that is coming, to me, the way I define respect, particularly for something like this, a podcast, coming early, coming prepared, coming with your heart.
Yes.
Right? There's no reason not to do anything else, right? The other thing that's valuable is what you're doing for me right now. It's sharing other people's ideas, thoughts, and actions. I call that spreading cred dust.
Yeah.
So if you want to be likable, spread cred dust, show respect, And it's really hard for people not to like you.
Yeah. It's the reason I ask is it's almost the journey we were discussing earlier in terms of how you happened upon credibility as a genuine area for further research and development. I've been finding myself having similar experiences, not through extensive research that you had conducted, but just what differentiates someone. What's one factor that differentiates someone from someone else who they should have certain advantages that they don't seem to be able to take advantage of, or they should have other, and I'll say in inverted commas, successes that they haven't enjoyed. And I came to the conclusion, just through observation, really, and opinion and a wee bit of experience, is that the likability becomes a key part. People want to do business with people that they like. People want to, it feels like there's almost a couple of layers of barriers that have been removed if there is a likability factor there. And, if you can attach credibility or intertwine credibility and likability, boy, you're already on the path of success of your ability to be able to serve and help and create impact.
Yep, I love that. Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the what we talked about earlier, your work on the helping companies and individuals articulate where executing on their purpose in less than 10 words. Can you tell me a bit more about that? And then tell me how you actually do that, as much as you can share.
Oh, absolutely. So, it's really interesting because when I did the research, I knew I had something special, but it took me probably 3 years afterwards to really identify what that was.
Right.
Right. Because what happens is there's this amorphous concept called purpose. We as humans, why are we here? Now, if you are religious, your purpose is to serve God. Right? So when I was helping people understand their less than 10 word statement, if they were very religious, sometimes I never got past the I'm here to serve God. Right.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting. I went to, it was actually last year, I went to the Purpose Summit. So this is a summit where lots of companies, high-end companies are coming and people who are focused on what does it mean to have a purpose-driven organization. And I went because I wanted to speak the following year, and I am speaking this year.
Congratulations.
But thank you. Thank you. I'm excited about that. And I'm speaking on executive abundance. We'll put that on the side in case we get a chance to come back to it. But what was interesting is, as I was there and I heard, it was like 3 days, so many people talk about purpose, I then realized what I had. And what I had is not helping people understand their purpose. What I had is helping people understand where they are executing on their purpose.
Right.
Because we as humans, we vibrate at a frequency. And when we wake up every day and we're consistent in what we do and how we do it, it turns out that what I help people identify in less than 10 words is the frequency they're vibrating at. It's where they're executing on their purpose today.
Yeah.
Sort of like writing that amazing book that sells off the shelf. If you're a business person in the US, you want that book. My content's better than anyone else. It's going to sell off the shelf. Those days are no longer relevant, right? It's hard to get there.
Yeah.
What I often tell people as a publisher, hey, let's do your second book first. You could always do that other book at some other point in time, right? Yeah. So since you don't have a book, I'm going to encourage you, just get a book out there. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? Then you can worry about whatever that next book is for you.
Yeah.
So for me, and do you mind if I'll give you the secret formula if you want it?
Oh, yes, please.
So I'm going to give you a phrase. The acronym is CPoP, the CPoP. It stands for Customer Point of Possibilities.
Right.
So if you are a credible human, you are of service to others.
Yeah.
So the CPoP formula is 2 pieces. The first piece is who. You're a servant leader. Who are you serving? 1, 2, or 3 words. Who do you serve?
Yeah.
The second piece, in also the total being less than 10 words, from their perspective, what is the pain point they're experiencing? Or what is the pleasure point they want to reach?
Right.
right? And what's really powerful, if you wake up every day, if you want, Gary, we could try to do yours live. I'm happy to do that. Or I can give you a couple of examples of CPops that work.
Yeah.
What I will tell you is, and I've now done this over 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And what I could tell you is that it is so eye-opening to be in alignment with who you are, be able to articulate in words with who you are. And I want to tell you what's also powerful, crazy. The world is full of chaos. It's full of chaos where you don't even recognize it as chaos. And so, having done this over 1,000 times, I could tell you that there are 10% of the audience who, when they hear their CPoP, they are DIY people. They're do-it-yourselfers. They know exactly what to do. They're going to take it and own it. And I will have changed their life for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
On the other hand, there are 90% who will allow themselves to get out of alignment between 2 hours and 2 weeks. Because somebody else is going to come by with a quote unquote better idea. I have a better idea on how you are executing on your purpose. Let me give you those words. Yeah. And they go, oh yeah, those words are right. And next thing you know, they no longer are aligned and they forget why they were happy talking to me.
Yeah.
Right. So what I'm always looking for is I'm looking for people who, I'm going to introduce another word. I'm looking for people who could help their clients with CPopping.
Yeah.
Right. So they get their CPoP first because it's relatively simple for me to help do that with people.
Yeah.
But then they need help. They need guidance. They need accountability partners to keep them aligned with who they know they are. But the world's going to enter all this chaos to try to take them out of alignment.
Yeah. It's so fascinating. I love the story about the audience and the ability to continue to engage, to continue to try to serve the audience, rather than them going away. I love the way you articulated it, why they were happy to speak to you, but they can't quite remember in 2 weeks' time afterwards, so to provide them with some sort of clarity. I did a social media post recently along similar lines in terms of what's meaningful for you. I was actually just explaining it to an undergraduate class this morning to say what's meaningful for you. Just take 5 minutes. You can do it real time or you can do it after the class and write down, say, the top 3 to 5 things that are meaningful, genuinely life meaningful for you for right now. They can change, of course, over time. And then think about all the things that you're doing in your life today and see if there's alignment between the things that are meaningful and your actual actions and your behaviors and your habits and what you're actually spending your time on. And, there's not that many. It was online. There's not that many on camera, but you can see a good 30 to 50% of people are kind of having this mental conversation with themselves to say, not really, so, and then observe other people that say that they are all about one thing, but actually behaving in a completely different way as we go forward. I was writing down some notes as you were chatting there. And I think that the CPOP thing for me, I have a relatively clear understanding of what that would be, certainly on, say, for example, on my coaching practice. I think I would struggle with the 10 words for right now. It's probably more elevator pitchy length for me for right now, and rather than just that succinct 10 words that would be imprinted upon my brain. But I'm going to accept a challenge, maybe not live, but I would be more than happy to do it as we correspond afterwards to say, I've given this some thought. I'm going to actually do this. I think this is genius. It really is. And I can see why it would be so impactful for the people that you interact with.
Well, if you're ready to be vulnerable, one of the elements and we have time. So we don't have time. Let's do it. We'll do it afterwards. It's always powerful because they're like, oh, that's too simple. And that's, by the way, the reason I will give away the formula is when I was doing the interviews, I realized after about the first, 30 to 50, I needed to create a video. Right. So I would send a video 16 minutes long. It's saying, hey, by the way, we want this interview to be great. Here are the 5 questions. The first question is, what is your CPoP? Here is the formula. And what I realized from the first 50 is that 98% of the people didn't have clarity. 98% couldn't do it. And so I basically, in the video, I made a challenge. I'm looking for the 2%. Are you the 2%? Here's the formula. Can you do it? And just so you know, the 450 after the first 50, even with the formula, they did not change.
Really?
Because it's that thing, whether you would call it chaos, whether you call it marketing cookie cutter approaches, it's really as simple as that formula is. It is not easy for people to look at themselves in that way and be able to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm more than willing to give it a go right now and be vulnerable and see where it takes us.
Oh,
I'm
super cool.
opportunity.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. By the way, having the conversation with you and knowing who you are, I may not say that on the air to everybody. I do it
Yeah.
occasionally,
Yeah.
but as you're a person who is coachable, as you are a person who is a servant leader, who has the intent and commitment to do the right thing by others, who really has an alignment of your external and internal integrity. These are things I could see from our conversation.
Yeah.
This will be really simple for us to create. Okay.
Wonderful.
All right.
Wonderful.
So let's focus we'll start with the who. Who is it that you serve? Who is the, 1, 2, or 3 words? What is that audience that you really just love? 80% of your revenue comes from.
I'll say the words and I'll not think about the 10 words just yet.
Oh, no. Just don't worry about length. I do that. Just
Okay.
who is it that you serve? The who.
People interested in self-education and self-development, self-starters.
Now, when we say people, what do you mean? Is it entrepreneurs? Is it?
It's basic. It's honestly anyone, mostly professionals that are mostly working for other organizations, not so much entrepreneurs in terms of the client base thus far.
Okay.
Male or
So
female.
it's professionals in the workforce.
Yeah.
Got it. Pretty much like sort of somebody who is a professional, which signifies they have a job working for somebody else.
Yes.
Okay. What's their pain point? What is it that they recognize from their perspective as a problem today?
The main thing is their lack of control. Lack of control of the systems and processes that they're operating within, and their lack of control of themselves under certain circumstances and situations where they feel that they're powerless. So that their behaviours don't really match what their intended behaviours would be.
Help me understand that. Share a little bit more on that so I can understand it.
So some people are having a really difficult time taking their work very, very, very seriously to the point of emotional distress and the various negative influencing factors surrounding that, and they don't like it. They know that it's not serving them, that's not representative of who they want to be as a professional or a person, and it's having wider implications on both their career aspirations and their personal life.
Mm. Is that what percentage of your clients come to you and they have emotional distress?
I don't. Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know that they would think of me when they're having an emotionally distressful situation. They would come to me when there is a work circumstance or situation that is causing them emotional distress. That's one of the
Wow.
outputs that's happening.
Got it. So, got it. So, what's a pleasure point? What would be um, what would be something that they would go, oh my God, this was amazing?
In terms of the outputs from our sessions, or in terms of what the outputs of the work that they're going to put in.
Good question. From their perspective, what do they think is success? Yeah.
I think for the most part, certainly recently, what people want is an ability to be seen and to be heard and to be valued.
Hmm. Interesting. Is that 80% of your business? Is people coming to you wanting to be seen and valued?
I don't know if it would be 80, but that's it's what certainly one of the more prevalent themes of late.
Got it. Interesting. Okay. Tell me anything else that comes to mind if you're trying to think about the themes of the primary things where people are coming to you and they go, "Yeah, I need you." Why would they say that?
I think for the most part, it's a partner in problem solving. It's the ability to create, you used the word clarity earlier, the ability to create clarity for themselves. And typically that clarity comes fairly early on in a session if it's an acute issue that they're trying to just navigate in that particular moment, where my question might be, do you have to? Insert whatever. Do you have to interact with that person? Do you have to work within the confines of that process? Do you have to communicate with these people? And sometimes it's as simple as, actually, no, I don't. No, I don't. I don't. That's actually out with my purview for this particular engagement or, this particular initiative or project. So I think it would be the clarity and problem solving. Especially with clients that have been a bit more longer term, they know that together we can create some magic in that space.
Hmm. I, I have I have an interesting. I'm going to put in chat. Hopefully, we have a chat button here. Let me see if I can find that. Chat. I'm going to put in chat because I'm a visual.
Yeah.
And nope. Hold on. I'm not sure if I could do it. So I'm pressing chat, but I don't know where to type it in. So I'll share it out loud. So here's the thing. We could probably spend a little bit more time, and we'll do this later. But I have two CPops, which are 3 words each.
Okay.
Right? And you're like, oh my God, 3 words? How can you explain me in 3 words? I decided that the word professionals is better than professionals in the workplace. As much as that sounds better, I like the word professionals.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to do a pain point, which by the way, 80% of CPops are pain point driven.
Yeah.
Something as simple as professionals feeling undervalued.
Right.
It's a great CPOP.
Yeah.
Now, if you wanted a pleasure point, you just do the opposite. Professionals being valued.
Yeah.
Right. The real concept, and I've got 2 that I'm actively doing. So I want to bring you to the next level. But before I do, how do either of those feel to you?
I love especially the first one. I visualized immediately changing my signature on my email to helping professionals feel valued. So it's almost an amalgam of both,
Dude,
you know?
love that. So,
Yeah.
by the way, you fall in the 10%. I've delivered over 1,000 CPOPs. 10% of the people actually go, as I'm talking to them, they're like, I could see their mind. If they're visual, I could see their mind going, their eyes rolling. I'm visual, so you don't often see me looking at the camera because I'm thinking, I'm looking at
Yeah.
the top of my head, right? And and I go, what are you doing? And they go, well, I got to update my website and my LinkedIn. And so what I want to do is I want to give you the next step,
Yeah.
right? When somebody says, "Who are you? What do you do?"
Yeah.
You, I'm going to encourage everyone who's listening, and you forget the 30-second elevator pitch.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a very obvious reason I'm going to tell you, or first I'll ask a question. Does the 30-second elevator pitch come from the head or come from the heart?
Mostly from the head.
Comes from the head.
Yeah.
How can you get somebody to know you and like you if you're speaking from the top of your head?
Yeah.
Okay. So throw out the 30-second elevator pitch. So somebody says, "Who are you?" What you want to do is set up a hook because they're not used to understanding what a CPOP is.
Hmm.
Right? So what I'll do is I will share your CPOP and you'll tell me more.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what happens is when somebody, you first give the hook. Sometimes hooks are companies I often work with or individuals that I add the most value to. That would be the hook.
Yeah.
Then you do a pause and then you share your CPOP. And here's the interesting part. If the person listening is a referral partner or a potential referral partner, a prospect, they're going to say, "What do you mean? Tell me more."
Yeah.
Right? If they don't say that, they don't really care. It just means they don't care about the playground you play in. That doesn't mean they don't care about you.
Yeah.
right? That's where we have to separate, right? There's a playground I play in. It's the frequency I vibe at. Your frequency is professionals feeling undervalued.
Mhm.
Got it. We could probably fine tune that and figure out the industry and add a couple more words. But at the moment, that's perfect.
Yeah.
And what you mentioned, adding to your LinkedIn profile and your signature at the bottom, that is a great tagline that fits within the framework, the playground of your CPoP, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what you would do if somebody said, "Who are you?" You know, there's a set of people that I do great work with. Pause. Professionals feeling undervalued. Let me tell you what that means. Of the professionals I run into, so many things are interesting. They know they need to fix things, but they're constrained by the system they're in. They're constrained by the way the company works. They're not getting to be seen the way they need to be seen. They're not getting valued the way they need to be valued.
Yeah.
So I have a 3, 5, 7-step process, or I do coaching over a 6-month period where what we do is the person I work with is somebody who is feeling undervalued before we start, and they're feeling very much valued when we're done.
Yeah.
Less than 60 seconds and you tell me more. The reason you have incremental credibility is because the clarity you defined in the playground you play in is so specific that when you add incremental words, it only builds on the credibility that you have by having such a focused playground, i.e. CPoP, that you play in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's incredible. That's genius. It really is.
Thank you.
It's one of these. I mean, talk about a fantastic advert for the benefits of working with a coach, and answering some meaningful questions and getting towards resolution or getting towards progress at that point. That's absolutely incredible. And I wasn't joking about updating my signature. I think there's so many opportunities and possibilities for this too. So that's incredible. Absolutely fabulous.
Oh, thank you. Well, I have a clarity framework. What I'll do, afterwards, we'll send you the CPoP and the clarity framework, and then you'll see how you can personally deploy it yourself.
Yeah.
Now, here's the interesting part. If somebody's listening, Mitchell, why would you give that away? Right? Well, first of all, many people, 98%, that I actually tell the formula are still not going to be able to deploy it. Second, if this is changing your life for the rest of your life, by the way, one of the things Marshall Goldsmith does is has a series of daily questions.
Yeah.
One of my daily questions is, did I change the life of somebody for the rest of their lives? It's quite possible that I did this with you. That'd be great.
Yeah.
What that means, if you're a do-it-yourselfer and you can do all this yourself, you're not a client of mine, but you could be a really good referral partner.
Yes.
Right? And then we can figure out also how to play together. Right? Yeah. And that's life is about playing in the playground and the playground and living your frequency. And if you live it out loud, people see it and they feel it and they can taste it and they want it.
Yeah.
And they want to, because they do trust you, because they get to know you and they really like you. They want to find ways that they can do business with you.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely fantastic. So you mentioned Marshall Goldsmith there. Of course, I mentioned him during the bio. You are part of the Marshall Goldsmith 100 Coaches organization. How did that come about in terms of your ability? Because my understanding now is it's not 100 coaches. It was intended to be that in the beginning. There's now more than 100 coaches there. Was that a referral? Was that through business that you had conducted before? Was it an application process? Was it an amalgam of all of the above?
So Marshall originally started it by having an idea that he was going to take all the information he had and share it with, I can't remember if the number was 15 people.
Right.
So he put out a request on LinkedIn, and lo and behold, he had 18,000 applications. So he increased that from, and I think I was one of the applications, absolutely not accepted way back when. Right. He ended up working with 25 people. I think he did it one more time, and then eventually what got born out of that was the 100 coaches, which originally was going to be 100 coaches. Now it's more. The what really happens today for those people who are 100 coaches, they recommend others they feel should be part of the group.
Mhm.
And there's a really good culture inside the 100 coaches.
Yeah.
And the culture is to be of service, to add value, with no guilt and no commitment.
Right.
Right. So if we are coaches to one another and we add value, we don't do it expecting something to come back,
Yeah.
expecting something in return. We don't sell each other, right? No sales, add value, no sales, uh, no commitment, right? And so what's interesting is it doesn't stop people from hiring each other that they're part of the 100 coaches, but we'll never sell. None of us will ever sell to each other.
Yeah.
And the real value is trust,
Yeah.
right? The real value is walking into the room and being able to, it's sort of like the relationship that a coach has with their client,
Yeah.
right? I sat on the board of a public firm. The relationship I had with the CEO and investors and the other board members,
Mm.
like 100%, nothing's off the table in terms of what we can talk about.
Yeah.
Right. And what happens with 100 coaches, it's a great experience to be around people who are like you. One of the coolest things they do is what's called a connect group.
Right.
And I think it's once a quarter. I think it could be 3 times a year or 4 times a year. But what happens is there's a group of 6 to 7 that get together and it runs for whoever, if it's 6 people, we run it for 7 weeks, where everyone gets a chance to share who they are and their story and where they came from. And then they get feed forward
Yeah.
for the audience in terms of what they want to do. Now, what's really interesting is you might ask yourself, well, why would I want to hear the same story twice? Well, that's where it gets really interesting because your story changes based on who you are at the time you tell it.
Yeah.
Right. And so what's important, what's of value to you, what you're asking at the end to get feed forward on is going to change based on your circumstances. And it is amazing to see people who they may be successful or wildly successful or not so successful, but then you hear their story and it's impossible not to reach out, want to be of value to them.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Absolutely incredible. I love that. I'm part of the local Calgary chapter of the International Coaching Federation, and as an academic at heart, I do genuinely believe in the value of certifications from reputable organisations and such. And just your explanation of the atmosphere of the supportive culture that's within the 100 coaches. I feel that when I enter the room, and I'm still a stranger to most because I'm relatively new to the community here, and it's just so different, Mitchell, to anything that I've ever experienced before. In terms of professional organisations, in previous ones, there's a level of competition, there's a level of, if I could say, judgment, of other people that are there, and there's maybe just not the absolute complete clarity as to why people are there, or they're not being honest about it. Whereas the coaching community, and certainly in the Calgary chapter, I hope other ICF chapters around the world have the same experience, is it's genuinely good people trying to do genuinely good things for genuinely good people, and
Mm-hmm.
they're willing and they're more than supportive. They're willing to share any type and style of information and resources and such like that. And it's very similar to what you said in terms of the selling versus the procuring of services and things like that. It's just a good place to be. When you leave, you feel better than you did when you went in, and even when you went in, you were probably feeling quite good at the same time. So fabulous to hear that's it's almost universal in terms of people with the truest of hearts getting together and doing the same sort of thing.
Oh, Gary, I'm so happy to hear that. I know the CEO, who's also a 100 coach, Magdalena Mook.
Yes.
And she'll be very happy when next time I talk to her and I mention that you said that.
Oh, wonderful. That's great to hear. So this is, of course, the Best You coaching podcast, the Best You interview series podcast. And I like to ask all guests before I let them go, what's one thing that you regularly employ, one practice, one behavior, one whatever it is, that gives you the opportunity to be the best version of yourself, Mitchell?
And it's not, is it what I deploy for me internally or what I deploy with others?
For you internally. Yeah.
Got it. I don't know if there's just one. That's a great question. I think obviously I know my CPoP. Actually, at the moment, I have two that I'm working with, right?
Yeah.
Simultaneous, because I have, for a good reason, I have a high level and a working level audience that I'm working with.
Yeah.
I recognize the importance of, I did mention, here we go, executive abundance. So I
Yes.
mentioned the practice of executive abundance. So what I'll say, I'll share a CPoP, executive abundance, and I'll answer your question.
Yeah.
Okay. So my CPoP is Inc. 5000 CEOs leading the future with executive abundance.
Right.
So what does that really mean? Fast growing companies primarily focus on one stakeholder group, right? They focus on investors.
Yeah.
A business owner, I might focus on one stakeholder group. What's my next set of clients, right?
Yeah.
However, we do that and sometimes forsake the four other stakeholder groups we got to focus on. That is employees, customers, the community at large, and your family and self.
Yes.
So as I practice myself, it's always about what is the community that I'm playing with, I'm working with. Who are my clients? Are they also referral partners?
Yeah.
Who are my employees? Are they happy and smiling? And most importantly, what am I doing for my family? What am I doing for myself? So I play Pokemon Go. I'll go out for, when it's not raining. It's raining at the moment, but when it's not raining, I'll go out for a walk at least once a day.
Yeah.
And I go into a meditative state while I'm playing Pokemon Go.
Yeah.
Right. I do that for self, right? Not for anyone else. Right. And so for me, it's not a single practice, but rather the making sure there's balance in 5 different areas of my life.
Yeah.
Right. Because that gives me overall balance. And going back to the single question, what do I really do for me? Did I change the life of one person for the rest of their lives today?
Yeah. Yeah. So powerful. Absolutely incredible. Mitchell, where can people find out more about you?
The best way is just going to my website. So it's mitchelllevy.com, MITCHELLLEVY.com. From there, you could connect to me on LinkedIn or whatever social makes sense. You could take a look at the programs we run, get your own clarity. Or if you want to book time on my calendar, that's all available at mitchelllevy.com.
Fantastic. This has been an incredible conversation for me, Mitchell. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've got something from it today.
Really
Thank you very
Thank
much
you
for letting me do the CPoP today. That was a revelation for me. I'm really looking forward to diving into that a little bit more. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be with me.
My pleasure. It was, of course I did. When you're with somebody who is of value, of service, as a servant leader to others, you can never, if you listen, you are always going to learn.